This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where leaders, seasoned entrepreneurs, and business owners share their wisdom. It's straight to the point to respect people's time, and because we know knowledge and wisdom turn to business possibility, and possibility mixed with support and action become reality. In this podcast, we discuss leadership, sales, marketing, operations, team development, quality, and finance to drive sustainable results and everlasting impact to make the world a better place. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Rob. Great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Brad. Thanks so much for having me on.
I'm really excited to have a conversation with you in doing the research on what you're doing and what you share and your experience, your life experience and your work experience. I'm very excited to have you on the show. This is some fascinating topics. So would you be willing to, I hope you're willing to share with the listeners and anybody watching and listening a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Well, I'm a writer. I'm an entrepreneur, former research scientist, former editor, and I'm the founder of a probably one of the biggest writing skills consultancies in the world called Emphasis. Set that up in 24 years ago, since when it's trained about 80,000 people in groups of 8 to 10. So, old school, small group training. But about, and that's from, that company worked with everyone from people in the tech giants of Silicon Valley to the Kingdom of Bhutan in the Himalayas, and even the royal household at Buckingham Palace. But for the last 6 years, I've been researching the science behind how the words that we read and write affect what we think and do. So now really I'm a full-time writer, even though, that training company runs itself or has some great people running it for me. So I'm in a very fortunate position. So I just get to really dig into the science of the words we read, and we read a lot of words now. We sent 319 billion emails a day last year, plus Slack and instant messaging, and it's very little in the business world. There's very little evidence-based advice. There's a lot of research in academia. We know a lot about it, or scientists do, but that doesn't really make it into the business world. And a lot of advice is based on hearsay, pseudoscience, wishful thinking. So I'm kind of on a mission to change that.
Fascinating stuff. So, Rob, how do we find the written signal from the noise then? No, I don't really expect you to be able to answer that question entirely.
Well, it's
that's what you're on a mission for, right?
How do you get through? That's the thing. How do you get through the noise? I think finding it is, I probably can't help with that. But getting through that noise and making sure that people hear the signal, and that people act on, are able to act on what you're sending them. It's really it's become almost the primary method of communication. People don't realize, we think about Zoom and we think the world's on Zoom now. But we actually spend less time in meetings than we used to. We might have more of them, and that was certainly true during 2020. But what are we doing in between? We're writing to each other. So how to get through and make sure you do connect with people. And I can dig into that now, or I can dig into that later on. It's up to you.
I want to hear what you have to say about that in just a moment. So I just thought I was having a little bit of fun with you there, but no, it's great. It's a fascinating topic, and I appreciate what you just said. I really want to highlight that, because a lot of clients I work with, that's what we're moving them to, is they're having meetings about meetings about meetings about meetings. And then we move them from having so many meetings to having key concept meetings in very specific structures, and then doing the work in between. And like you mentioned, like a Slack or some other channel like that. And some companies are expert at that. There's still many companies who are not, or who have not even had that much exposure to them. And yeah, I mean, those are startups, and they're even seasoned companies who just have never, transitioned. And so we definitely live in an interesting time of words, and things are changing. Things are definitely changing. So I'm interested to dive in more. Before we do, what's the best thing about being in business, Rob?
Oh, lots of things. I think back to when I was working as an editor, when I had a proper job, my last proper job 24 years ago. And I used to get a feeling on a Sunday evening. It's like, oh, tomorrow's Monday. The weekend's over. And I haven't had that feeling in 24 years. I really haven't. Now, not to say that everything has been wonderful, because it hasn't. If I think back to the early days, we think back to years ago and we imagine it was always sunny, and I'm pretty sure in the early days of my training company Emphasis that I'm pretty sure it was always raining. That's how I remember it, but I've never regretted doing that. And I think something else that's really good about it is, if you do it well, then you can make the job what you want it to be. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs forget that. They forget why they're doing it, and they forget that they can change things. So to be very purpose driven, and to be able to create your own job, and once you create an organization, to build in flexibility. You have to be careful, because you can build in flexibility to work all the time. If you it's very easy to fall into that trap. But yeah, it's the best job in the world in so many respects.
Love that. Raining, but maybe raining on your own terms.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? It was so hard in the early days, but we got through that, and that's the experience that most entrepreneurs have. You get through that, and if you get through it, then it's very easy to forget that where you've come from, and to now the thing I really should say is, it's a privilege to work with so many great people. And I think when clients take you into their confidence, and it's a huge range of clients, as I mentioned, when they take you into their confidence, when they trust you, when they tell you the details of their business and their real challenges, that's a genuine privilege. And it means that no 2 days are the same. And that's pretty good. You never get bored. I don't think you ever get bored when you're running your own business.
Isn't that the truth? Those are some really strong and powerful statements that you made. And I like the way, you said that really eloquently. When clients take you into their confidence, that is a really important statement, because even getting a prospective client to get on the phone with you and share some personal information is a challenge. It's a challenge for anybody in business, right? But when that does happen, then creating that trust level for them to share what is really occurring in their business, their fears and everything else, that's important and powerful stuff. And I love that you called it a privilege. Indeed, it is very true and a powerful statement. So thanks for sharing, Rob. I appreciate that. Here's my favorite question. I love this question as a systems guy. Like, we hear from people all over the world that they're getting so much business. Now, I know some people don't experience that, but we hear from a lot that they are experiencing that. And sometimes that causes some overwhelm in their business, getting too much business. Would you be willing to share your thoughts on that subject?
Of course. Yeah. I think sometimes it's a question of, be careful what you wish for. It's to begin with, you don't have enough clients. And if you are good at what you do, then pretty soon you'll probably have too many clients. I think you have to remember why you're doing it. It's very important to maintain a sense of perspective, but also to remember that you are dealing with people, and it's, I think with a lot of, you see a lot of coping strategies, advice on, for instance, how to deal with email overwhelm. And, a lot of them involve, how to get rid of email, how to clear your inbox, and, stick a flag in the ground and declare, go on social media and declare inbox zero, and I always say to people, just imagine, each of those emails were coming from, as they're coming from real people, and just imagine those people are outside your door. Would you say, right, my first job is just to get rid of these people so I can do the real work? The email is the work, and it's very easy to forget that. But of course, you still have to manage it, and you have to, there are all sorts of systems, apps now that can do some of that for you. So I would certainly recommend trying some of those. But yeah, it's I think the best thing I ever did was to make the business not about me. I mean, that's what has enabled me to be a full-time writer and to focus on the research. But I right at the start, I was sure that what I wanted to do was to create a business, not a job. Because if you create a job for yourself, if it's all about you, then it's not the best job in the world. It's the worst job in the world, because you're literally your own boss. You have your boss in your head, and we're least forgiving about our own mistakes, aren't we? So I would say build a business so that, that's going to mean investing some of your profit, rather than just taking all the cash. That's going to mean reinvesting that profit in expanding your team. But I would say definitely do that, because I did that in the early days, and I'm reaping the benefits now, but also means we can serve a lot more people. I've seen so many entrepreneurs get really excited about the amount of business they've got, and then they get completely swamped, and then they try and get rid of the business, and the whole thing collapses. So, build it to grow, reinvest, and remember why you're doing it.
Love that. Really, really great advice already. We're in the people business. Clear, very clear. And I love that you shared that. Also, infrastructure, build some infrastructure, right? So the email thing, that comes up a lot. I have 6 emails in my email inbox. My email comes in, it's and when I tell people that, they're like, what? How do you do that? Well, infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
Create a system that actually works and know how it works. And it is doable for anybody. And service. I mean, it's all about service. I love that you shared that, and build a team around you. So great advice, Rob. Thank you. Next question. Who else, successful like yourself, of course, ought to be on the Unlimited Business Wisdom podcast?
There's a guy called Jack Hubbard who formed an agency here in Brighton, where we are in the UK, about 60 miles south of London. He formed an agency called PropellerNet. And I really think you should speak to him if you can. First off, he's an original. He's a clear thinker and an original thinker. But I think one of the most innovative things he's done is to be able to build an extremely motivated workforce. And he has this thing, or he introduced this thing called the Dream Machine. And it's basically an old bubblegum machine, or like a kind of Kinder Egg type thing. And each little capsule in that machine has someone's dream in it. So it gets employees to just write what their dream is. And it could be, I want to motorcycle across South America. Or it could be, I want to take my mum on the first holiday that she's ever had in 10 years, and take 2 months off to do that, or whatever. And what he does is every few months he gets the team together, and they turn the handle, and out pops a capsule, and they make someone's dream come true.
Wow.
So I've never heard of anyone doing that, and it's such an unusual story. So, and he's a really interesting guy. So yeah, Jack Hubbard, check him out.
That's fascinating. I love that. What a great story. And how motivating would that be? That's really taking care of your people. I love that.
Yeah,
that's great.
Absolutely.
Is your dream in there too?
I'm
Not
living
yet,
my
huh?
dream, Brad. I'm living my dream.
What a wonderful answer. I love that answer.
That's
That's
true.
so great. Thank you so much. Let's get to the crux of this, Rob. What in, I mean, in this vast information age, when all the writing and the experience and uh, I mean, you have a lot to bring to the table. I imagine this was challenging for you. Like, what one piece of advice do I share, right? I'd love to hear from you. What advice would you share with other business owners, Rob?
Um, so in terms of written communication, I would say that first of all, be aware that we are reading all the time, and you know you can mess up a relationship pretty quickly through writing. And you know, I see this a lot where people are great face to face, great on the phone, and then they might follow up with an email, and it looks like it's been written by a robot. You know, it's just something that people do. They think that that's what they have to do when they're writing, and they completely change the way they write. But people need to understand that reading is very hard for the brain. We didn't evolve to read and write. We evolved to speak and listen. We've only been we first started writing about 5,000 years ago, which might sound like a long time ago, but it's just a heartbeat in evolutionary terms, and it's not long enough to evolve brain structures to do it. So we're kind of operating almost close to capacity when we're reading, and most of the reading takes place in our heads. You know, the brain is essentially in a sealed black box. It's just got eyes and ears, but actually, you know, obviously when you're reading, it's just your eyes, but there's not much information that the eye can take in. We think we're seeing everything when we're reading, but we're not. We're just seeing just a few letters, and this has been proven in time and again in experiments. So what we're actually seeing is what we expect to see. And this is so important that you know, when you are reading what you expect to see, and then your eyes are confirming whether or not it's right. But often they get it wrong, and that's why, you know, we misread emails. That's why we miss typos in the title of a presentation, and we don't spot it until we're presenting it to 200 people in an auditorium. You know, it's kind of we see what we expect to see. We've got this kind of confirmation bias. And also when we're reading, our emotions are in charge. So you need to be aware of these things. When you're writing, you need to write like a human. You need to, in fact, most of all, you need to remember the human you are writing to. You need to try to put yourself in their shoes. And these days, you know, they could be anywhere. It's kind of they might be stuck in a traffic jam, and in a misguided attempt to get some relief from that, they check their email, you know, so they might already be annoyed. They could be stressed dropping the kids off to school. They could have just come out of a meeting and be upset about that. They're probably going to be in a rush. They're probably not considering it as much as you are, or hopefully you are as you're writing it. And they're going to have limited bandwidth. Psychologists call writing a low capacity channel. You can convey much less with writing than you can through the voice. There's evidence that it doesn't stimulate the release of oxytocin, this really important hormone it's like a social lubricant that you know, can help us manage relationships. That there's evidence that that's not released when we're reading. So you're already at a disadvantage. So what you need to do is to really try and put yourself in the reader's shoes. And there are some things you can do. Okay, so you can, if you make something easy to read, it's more likely to go in. It's more likely even to be believed. We have this thing called the fluency heuristic. If something is easy to understand, then we tend to believe it. Okay, so it's kind of, we just kind of go with it. So, you know, it's, you're going to use that with care, use that responsibly, but you know, the opposite is true. If you make something difficult to understand, then you're probably not going to keep the you know, could be your prospect on side, for instance, or your client. And bear in mind that if they are annoyed about something and then they read your email, there's another cognitive bias that says they might then think that your email is what annoyed them. It's kind of, you know, we are so ruled by emotions, so you have to tread carefully. Write like a human, don't try to impress people with your language. So that's so important. We think that when we're writing, we have to impress people with our words. You should be writing to express, not to impress. And so rather than saying we aim to commence transportation at an early date or something like that, you could say, well, we're going to transport this soon, or even we're going to send this soon. Or rather than saying soon, be specific. Say when you're going to send it. You can get rid of a lot of words. Words that end in tion or sion, shun words. They're usually a sign that you can cut some other words out. So rather than saying that's investigation, we're going to commence an investigation, you could say we're going to investigate. And then rather than commence, you can say start. It just makes it easy to go, and you're more likely to be believed. And bear in mind that the readers are not, the person you're writing to is not in your head. You have a tune in your head. You have a, almost literally, just briefly, there's a study 10 years ago, a scientist called Elizabeth Newton at Stanford. And what she did was she got people to tap out a tune. So it said, okay, here's the tune. And it could be something that, lots of people know. So, it could be, I don't know, Star Spangled Banner or Happy Birthday or whatever, And so they're okay, tap this out just with your hands, on your desk. And how many people do you think will get, out of 100, how many people will be able to identify the tune just from your tapping? And the tappers estimated that it would be about 50%. Well, the actual amount was 2.5%.
Oh, I was going to say 5. I was close.
Yeah, it was 2.5%. Yeah, you were pretty close. But we find it really, we can't unknow what we know. It's in our heads, and when we're writing, we project that onto the person, in this case, reading what we've written. So, really, really try to put yourself in their shoes. And I would say write it down, kind of move away from your desk, go old school, get a pencil, bit of paper, and write down, what do they know? What are they interested in? And what do they want? And what do they need? Because what you need and what you want, as are often two different things. So, and how can I make them want what they need? But where are they now? Because everybody starts from where they are now. Keep it short, but not too short. Don't just give them a lot of bullets. That'll be my final piece of advice, really, is don't mistake communication for data transfer. We often think of the brain as a computer. It helps to think of it sometimes like that, but in this instance, it really doesn't, because you are not simply transferring data from your head to the reader's head. It'd be nice if you could, but that's not the way it works. So, you'll see advice out there that says things like, keep it as short as possible, and just use bullets. That can really, pardon the pun, that can backfire. Because if you just write somebody if you just have a series of bullets, you can lose a sale, because you're just giving people information with no context. You have the story in your head. You know how those bullets are connected. They don't. So what are they going to do? They're going to make up their own story. You lose all control of the narrative. So that final one is to use that power of story. I sometimes even talk about micro stories. Rather than saying, here are the results, you can say, I've been looking into your problem, and I've made a discovery. It's kind of, you're starting to create a narrative. And if you say something like that, they want to know what's next, right? You want to know how the story continues, and yet it can be the same information. So use that power of story. I know this is a lot. I've got a free course on all of this that I've put together. So if your listeners and viewers want to check that out, if they just go to robashton.com/influence, I've put together a free course. It's totally free. There's no marketing, no selling in there. And it's called Silent Influence, and it's all about how the words we read and write affect what we think and do. So yeah, I just urge people to check that out.
I love that. And I want to stress, well, I want to highlight and showcase a couple of things you said. You dropped a lot of value there in nuggets. And you did explain it in a very good way, but I imagine there's probably some questions from the people listening and watching. So I love that you also said that it's a free course and you gave context. And I want to highlight that first. Before the show, you even said, "Hey, I want to offer something to the listeners and people watching." And it's not a funnel at all. It is truly a free resource. And so I want to highlight that. And because we hear a lot of this stuff, and there's a lot of marketing out there today, but no, it's something that you're actually providing people to help them learn. So thank you for doing that, and that's wonderful. I appreciate you. I want to celebrate you for that. But you shared so much. One of the things, though, was the bullets and context thing. That really jumped out at me because I have a framework that I use. I won't go into it here, but I teach it. And it's basically, a lot. I've found, as I imagine you have, people give a lot of context. It's context, 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 context. And then they go ahead and ask something. You've already lost a person. So I was really interested what you said about the bullets and the context and the narrative. Those three things really jumped out as very important. And I think I'd love to hear from you, your experience, right? I'm just the armchair scientist here. You're the actual scientist, but the way you put those in the order you put those in is kind of what you're going to get out. You mentioned a black box earlier, and I would think that's important. That's one thing. And the other thing that jumped out at me was, here's the visual that I had in my head is like, here's the thing that you're relaying. So it's big. I had 3 circles, and I've seen an image in this way, and it jumped in my mind when you were speaking. So the big it is like, here's what I'm saying, right? And then the smaller circle is like, here's what people hear, and then there's a little tiny circle down here is like, here's what people understand. And it's probably that 2.5% thing that you that you mentioned as well. I mean, I think we all have a narrative like, of course they should understand me and I shouldn't have to repeat myself. However, in writing, that's verbally, that's true, but in writing, I think it's even more enhanced. So I'd love to hear what you have to share on those 2 topics.
Well, of course, also with writing is you can't repeat yourself normally, and you don't get to know if somebody hasn't understood it, but you can send someone an email and they can ignore it. And I'm sure we've all had experience of that. If you're speaking with somebody, you get the feedback. You can see their expression, you can hear their tone of voice, and you get a chance to course correct. You can kind of see that look in your eyes, and you can say, "Oh, I'm losing you. Let me put that another way." You don't get a chance to do that with writing. It's asynchronous. Even with instant messaging systems like Slack or Teams chat or text messaging, it's not really synchronous writing. It's not like talking. Even customer care, we have these live chat boxes now. We see them everywhere. You usually far more likely to do that to contact a help desk than to speak to somebody. But it's still asynchronous, and it's the written word, and it's really, really, really easy to misinterpret what's being said. So yeah, I mean, it's you have to bear that in mind. I would say that there was an article that went viral a few years ago called "How to Write Like the Military," and it was shared far and wide. It really blew up. Got all these dreadful puns that I'm unintentionally dropping in, but it talked about things. The military are very big on bottom line up front, bluff. So give me the news, then give me the background, and that's fine sometimes. Perhaps if you're on the battlefield, but it's you're trying to build a relationship, then just going straight in with that bottom line can be really harsh, and it can not get you the results you want. So you can just imagine it. If you're writing, if you followed this advice, it would be there will be a title, and the title will be in, you know, all these titles were coded, like info for information, coord for coordination, whatever that is. And then it will be, you know, the bottom line would be, you know, all leave is cancelled next week. You know, so that's, you know, that's like being punched in the face, and you're not going to get that back. You're not going to, once you've triggered that emotion, whatever you say next is going to be colored by that emotion you've just triggered. So you have to bear in mind that it's a process. Yeah, sure. You know, don't give people too much context. So I mean, I see this, for instance, in proposals. So many people start proposals with 2 pages about them. You know, so it's the other end of the scale. It's like, who are we? What do we do? We're brilliant. We're wonderful. You know, they don't care. The person reading that doesn't care yet. You've not told them why they should care. You know, start with the customer's problem. Show a bit of knowledge about where they are, and then say why they can't stay there. You know, it's sort of, I think of position, problem, possibilities, proposal. You know, so where you are, and then why you can't stay there. Get them nodding first, positive. You know, oh, they understand me, and yeah, but here's the problem you told me about, and then you really build that problem. You make a case for doing something. So you're taking them through a thought process, and a lot of that is emotional. By the end of that problem section, they should be thinking, we've got to do something, and then they are really well placed to receive some of your advice. And then they think, who are these people? They sound like they know everything about my problem. You know, we've got to get these guys in. Who are they again? And then you can tell them a bit more about who you are, what you do, and what your experience is. So you're kind of almost closing the deal there. Nice. Don't start with too much context in that instance. Make it, but I guess it all comes back to being reader focused, being client focused.
I love it. I was just looking through. I have so many notes written down already, Rob. Just know your audience, and, you know, state what they're looking for, and make sure that you're looking from their point of view and not your point of view, and how you can, you know, how they may have limited bandwidth. That was some really good point. And you just never know where they might be receiving it nowadays. And then culturally too. I mean, there's very, very different cultures. So, you know, here in the States, squeaky wheel gets the grease, you know, but like in other cultures, it's kind of like, you know, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So where's their frame of mind? And I love that you shared that. Like, what do they know? Right. And then how do we speak to them based on what they need? Really important stuff. Rob, thank you so much. I know we could go for hours, and I know your knowledge is very deep. And so I appreciate you. I really want to celebrate you and highlight you for being here. I want to appreciate that you took a chunk out of your day. You did. And I heard you say you get to do it earlier, but I mean, I really want to highlight and showcase that you did that. You chose to do it. So thank you for being here, for sharing, for the betterment of other people. We're in the people business. So thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.
I know you shared earlier. I'm going to give you an opportunity to share another as well, if there's another one, but I know you're working on a number of initiatives. So if you take a moment and just talk about what you're working on, and where you know, when somebody hears this and they listen to it or watch it and they want to reach out to you or get involved with some of the initiatives that you're on, how do they do that? What's the best way for them to do that?
I mean, all roads lead to Rome, or from Rome in this case. You know, if they go to robashton.com, you know, I mentioned robashton.com/influence for that free course. But on that website, they'll find links to my day job, what was my day job, emphasis. So yeah, that's just the best place to go, just to keep it simple. There's obviously a contact form on there. But yeah, what I'm really trying to do is just get the word out for how much of an issue this is. You know, this is something that really does come from the heart. I don't need to do it, but it's something that I'm genuinely interested in. There's just so little information on this out there about how we really read, not how we think we read. And I think, given that we are spending so much time communicating in this way, you know, really it's just all about that. I'm working on a book at the moment. That's books take a long time to come out. So, that won't be around for another year or two. So I just want to get this message out there and just, get people to dig into this and to just start to perhaps take notice of it as a subject and just, if they just go to my website, they'll find a blog there. I update it regularly with each piece of research that I come up with. It's usually every 3 or 4 weeks I add something pretty in-depth stuff. But yeah, that's the best way to stay on top of this.
Count me in, and everybody listening and watching, get us on the waiting list for that book.
Oh yeah.
Before we leave, I ask everybody this question, and look, I know you and I can talk about deep stuff and interesting stuff, fascinating stuff, and business stuff all day, every day, but we work to live, not live to work, right? And so I ask everybody, what's the most fun vacation you've ever had? So Rob, what's the most fun vacation you ever had?
I have to start by saying I'm a workaholic. I don't wear that as a badge of honor. But I say it because I imagine most of your audience are too. When we go into business, we do it because we want to do it, and we get, it draws us in, and we want to work all the time. So I'm not very good at taking vacations. But I once, it's a big statement. I once flew a helicopter through the Alps. Okay. Nice. So, and I, doing that kind of thing was great. That year, I also went on the world's fastest zip wire, which is it's 1,500 feet high and a mile long, and it goes at 100 miles an hour. This was in Bethesda, nice. in Snowdonia in Wales. But you know what? Those weren't the best things I did that year. The best thing I did that year was to take my son, my teenage son, to the Brecon Beacons, which is a mountain range in Wales, to a dark skies reserve, because we're a crowded little island here in Britain, and it was a place where he could see the Milky Way. He'd never seen the Milky Way before. And we hired a VW camper van and we drove over there, and we looked at the Milky Way. And the next day, we climbed up a small mountain, and we almost got blown off the top. It was raining, it was windy. That was easily the best thing I did that year. Easily far better than flying that helicopter through the Alps. It was, and it's still up there. It's still probably the best thing I've ever done. So I think it's really important to take the time to do that kind of thing.
I love it. Great stories. Rob, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate you. Great to hear some more about you and some of your interests in the things that you're involved in. So appreciate you. And I suspect we'll probably have you back at some point too. So maybe when your book comes out, we'd love to have you back. So thank you so much for being here. I celebrate you, and thanks for being on the show.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come back.
This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where leaders, seasoned entrepreneurs, and business owners share their wisdom. If you're looking for more on leadership, sales, marketing, or operations to drive team development, higher quality, and high-level sustainable profits, we encourage you to join the Built for Brilliance community on Facebook, or reach out to us about one of our mastermind groups, coaching or consulting, or even fractional COO services. You can reach us at buildbrilliance.net/contact. We thank you for listening, for sharing the show, and appreciate your rating and reviews, as this makes more shows possible. Thanks for joining us.